Chapter 1. The Ice Holds Secrets. The wind, a serrated blade, tore at the edges of the polar research station. It howled not with the familiar fury of a blizzard, but with a keening, almost mournful cry that seemed to seep into the marrow of my bones. It was a sound I'd grown accustomed to in my 6 months at Outpost 31, but tonight, amplified by a building dread, it was different. It was personal. My name is Dr. Aris Thorne, and I am, or rather was, a glaciologist. I say was because the ice here has shown me things that have irrevocably altered my understanding of reality, things that have chipped away at my sanity like a chisel on granite. The outpost itself, a cluster of prefabricated modules clinging precariously to a shelf of rock overlooking the endless expanse of the Arctic ice sheet, had become a prison of my own making, geographically and psychologically. We were isolated, a tiny speck of humanity swallowed by a monstrous, frozen landscape. The initial team consisted of 7 scientists, hand-picked for their expertise and, perhaps more importantly, their tolerance for extreme isolation. There was Dr. Lena Hansen, our lead biologist, a woman driven by an almost fanatical curiosity about extremophiles. Then there was Ben Carter, our engineer, a gruff but reliable man who kept the station's aging machinery running. Dr. Jian Lee, a meteorologist, obsessed with predicting the increasingly erratic weather patterns. And finally, 3 support staff. Maya, our cook, a woman with a surprisingly calming presence, and 2 security personnel, Jake and Kurt. 7 souls against an unforgiving world. Now only 4 of us remain. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Glitches in the equipment, easily dismissed as the consequence of extreme temperatures and outdated technology. The satellite communication system would flicker, blanketing the station in an eerie silence. The only sound was the wind whispering secrets through the cracks in the walls. The lights would flicker, casting elongated, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, fleeting glimpses of movement in the periphery, but when I turned to look, there was nothing. The others dismissed it as sleep deprivation and the endless monotony of our surroundings. But the whispers grew louder, not audible voices but a feeling, an intuition that something was wrong. The ice itself seemed to resist our presence, groaning and shifting in unnatural ways. One day, when the team were out studying the ice, Ben pointed out to me that some of our machines that measured the age of the ice weren't acting properly. When we checked the machines, they were running backward. It was as though time itself was fracturing. The walls of the station seemed to sweat, and a strange, sickly sweet odor permeated the air, a combination of sulfur and decay that sent shivers down my spine. It was Lena who first noticed the change in the ice core samples. We were drilling deep into the ice sheet, hopping to unlock the secrets of past climates. But the deeper we drilled, the stranger the samples became. The ice was no longer a pristine record of the past. Embedded within it were things, indistinct shapes, almost organic in nature, frozen in time. Then the dreams started. Vivid, disturbing visions of a city buried beneath the ice, a metropolis of impossible geometry and cyclopean structures, illuminated by an unholy, phosphorescent glow. I saw figures moving within those icy halls, grotesque beings with elongated limbs and eyes that burned with an ancient malice. One evening, the satellite communication system went down again, this time for good. Ben tried everything he could, but the system refused to come back online. We were cut off from the outside world, completely isolated. It was then that the true horror began to unfold. The first casualty was Kurt. We found him one morning, his body twisted into an unnatural pose, his eyes wide with terror. There was no sign of a struggle, no apparent cause of death. Maya began to pray, reciting verses from the Bible, but her prayers seemed to bounce off the cold, uncaring walls of the station. Jake, a man of simple, brutal logic, immediately suspected foul play. His gaze fell on me, fueled by a growing paranoia. He knew something, Jake snarled, his voice laced with suspicion. He was always muttering about the ice, about what it was hiding. The others started to whisper behind my back, casting furtive glances in my direction. I could feel their distrust, their growing fear. I tried to reassure them, to explain the science behind the ice cores and the strange anomalies we had discovered, but my words sounded hollow, even to my own ears. Then Lena began to change. Her obsession with the ice grew more intense, bordering on madness. She spent hours staring at the core samples, muttering to herself in a language I didn't understand. She started performing strange rituals in her lab, arranging the ice cores in bizarre patterns, chanting in a low, guttural voice. One night I found her standing naked in the snow, her arms outstretched towards the sky, her face illuminated by the pale moonlight. Her eyes were vacant, devoid of all humanity. She spoke, but it wasn't her voice. It was a guttural, alien cadence that echoed across the frozen wasteland. "The ice remembers," she rasped, her voice a distorted mimicry of Lena's own. "The ice hungers." I knew then that we were all doomed. The ice wasn't just a geological formation. It was a prison, a tomb, and something ancient and malevolent had been awakened. I retreated to my quarters, locking the door behind me. I sat huddled in the corner of the room, listening to the wind howling outside. I pulled out my journal and started writing, documenting everything that had happened, everything that was about to happen. The clock on my desk ticked backwards, each tick a hammer blow against my sanity. I could smell the sulfur and decay, stronger now, permeating the very fabric of the station. I could hear Lena chanting outside, her voice growing louder, closer. Then a voice, cold and sharp, echoed from the monitor on my desk, a voice that seemed to know me. "Aris," it whispered, "don't you want to know what secrets the ice holds?" The screen flickered and died. I was alone in the dark, with the wind, the chanting, and the growing certainty that something unspeakable was about to break through. I started to pray too, but I don't believe in God. Then the door to my quarters began to rattle. Chapter 2: Echoes in the Ice. The rattling intensified, morphing into a series of violent thuds that reverberated through the thin metal walls of my quarters. Each impact sounded like a death knell, a chilling announcement of my impending doom. I pressed myself further into the corner, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. My breath hitched in my throat, a silent scream trapped within the confines of my fear. "Aris," the distorted voice echoed again, this time directly outside my door. It was Lena's voice, yet twisted, corrupted, infused with an alien malice that made my blood run cold. "Open the door, Aris. We have so much to show you." I knew with a certainty that transcended reason that opening that door would be a fatal mistake. But what choice did I have? Staying put was a slow, agonizing death sentence, a protracted descent into madness as whatever lurked outside chipped away at my resolve. With trembling hands, I reached for the only weapon I had at my disposal, a geological hammer, its head worn smooth from years of use. It was a pathetic defense against whatever unholy entity had taken root in this place, but it was better than nothing. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the inevitable. As I fumbled with the lock, I heard a faint clicking sound, like the tumblers of a combination safe falling into place. Then, a section of the wall beside the door slid open, revealing a narrow passage that I hadn't known existed. It was shrouded in darkness, a yawning maw that seemed to beckon me into its depths. For a moment I hesitated, torn between the certainty of death on the other side of the door and the unknown horrors that awaited me in the passage. But Lena's voice, closer now, brooked no further delay. "Aris," she hissed, her voice laced with impatience. "Don't make us come in there." I made my choice. Gripping the geological hammer tightly, I plunged into the darkness. The passage was narrow and claustrophobic, the walls icy and damp. The air was thick with the same sickly sweet odor that permeated the station, intensified to an almost unbearable level. I stumbled blindly forward, my hand outstretched to guide me through the darkness. The passage sloped downwards, leading me deeper into the bowels of the ice sheet. As I descended, I heard a faint dripping sound, like water echoing in a vast cavern. The passage opened into a large chamber, its walls lined with ice crystals that glittered in the dim light emanating from an unknown source. The air was frigid, biting at my exposed skin. In the center of the chamber, I saw it. A structure of ice, impossibly large and intricate, that resembled a city, the city I had seen in my dreams. Towers of jagged ice pierced the ceiling, connected by bridges of frozen mist. Halls and chambers of impossible geometry stretched into the distance, disappearing into the shadows. But it wasn't just the architecture that was disturbing. It was the sense of wrongness. The angles were too sharp, the proportions too distorted. It was as if the city had been designed by a mind utterly alien to human comprehension. As I stared in awe and horror, I noticed something moving within the icy halls. Figures, indistinct and shadowy, gliding through the city with an unnatural grace. They were the beings from my dreams, elongated and grotesque, their eyes burning with an ancient malice. I realized with a jolt that this wasn't just a hallucination, a product of my sleep-deprived mind. This was real. The city beneath the ice was real, and the beings that inhabited it were very much alive. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice that resonated with an ancient power. "Welcome, Aris Thorne," it boomed, "to the heart of the ice." The figures in the city turned towards me, their burning eyes focused on my trembling form. They began to move, gliding towards me with an inexorable purpose. I knew that I was trapped, caught in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Then, as if summoned by the voice, the ice itself began to shift. The walls of the chamber trembled, and cracks appeared in the floor. A section of the ice beneath my feet gave way, plunging me into a dark abyss. I fell for what seemed like an eternity, the icy wind whistling past my ears. I landed with a bone-jarring thud on a pile of something. I couldn't see in the darkness, but I could feel the texture beneath my hands, cold, smooth, and disturbingly organic. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized with a sickening lurch that I was lying on a pile of bones. Human bones. Skulls stared up at me with empty sockets, their jaws agape in silent screams. Rib cages formed a macabre latticework beneath my body. It was a charnel house, a repository of forgotten souls. Then I saw it, a small rectangular object nestled among the bones. It was a journal, bound in leather and worn smooth with age. I picked it up, my fingers trembling, and opened it. The first page contained a single chilling inscription: "Beware the whispers of the ice." As I flipped through the pages, I realized that it was a diary written by someone who had been here before, someone who had witnessed the horrors of the city beneath the ice, someone who had tried to warn others. The diary entries spoke of strange rituals, of sacrifices made to appease the beings in the city, of a growing darkness that threatened to consume the world. The writer described the same symptoms we had been experiencing: the glitches in the equipment, the flickering lights, the distorted voices. Then I came across a passage that made my blood run cold. "The ice is not just a prison," the writer had scrawled in a shaky hand. "It is a mirror. It reflects our deepest fears, our darkest desires, and if we stare into it for too long, it will stare back." I looked up from the diary, my heart pounding in my chest. I realized with a sudden clarity that the city beneath the ice wasn't just a place. It was a manifestation of our collective unconscious, a physical embodiment of our deepest anxieties and repressed desires. The realization sent a wave of nausea washing over me. I stumbled to my feet, desperate to escape this macabre chamber. But as I turned to leave, I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. Standing in the shadows, their eyes burning with an ancient malice, were the beings from the city. They had found me. Chapter 3: The Frozen Choir. The beings stood motionless, their elongated forms silhouetted against the faint light filtering down from above. They didn't speak, didn't move, yet I felt a palpable sense of dread emanating from them, a suffocating pressure that threatened to crush me beneath its weight. It was as if they were patiently waiting, savoring my fear like a fine wine. I clutched the geological hammer tighter, my knuckles white with tension. I knew it was a futile gesture, a symbolic act of defiance against an enemy I couldn't possibly defeat. But I couldn't just stand there and wait to die. I had to do something. With a surge of adrenaline, I charged towards the nearest being, swinging the hammer with all my might. The hammer connected with its head, a sickening crack echoing through the chamber. The being staggered back but didn't fall. It turned its burning gaze towards me, its expression unreadable. Then it spoke, not in the distorted, guttural voice I had heard before, but in a clear, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the very air. "You cannot harm us, Aris Thorne," it said, its voice devoid of emotion. "We are the echoes of your own fears." The other beings began to chant, a low, rhythmic drone that filled the chamber with an oppressive energy. The chant grew louder, more intense, resonating within my skull like a physical force. I felt my sanity slipping away, my grip on reality loosening. The being I had struck reached out a long, skeletal hand and touched my forehead. A surge of energy coursed through my body, and I felt myself lifted off the ground. I hung suspended in the air, helpless as the beings surrounded me, their burning eyes piercing my soul. Then they showed me. Images flooded my mind, a chaotic jumble of memories, fears, and desires. I saw myself as a child, cowering in the dark, terrified of the monsters under my bed. I saw my father, his face contorted in anger, his words like knives cutting me to the core. I saw my colleagues, their faces twisted with envy and resentment, their whispers poisoning my reputation. I saw my own failures, my own insecurities, my own repressed desires. I saw the darkness within me, the anger, the resentment, the fear that I had tried so hard to suppress. The beings were feeding on my negative emotions, amplifying them, twisting them into grotesque parodies of reality. I felt myself drowning in a sea of despair, my mind fracturing under the strain. Then the images changed. I saw the city beneath the ice, not as a monstrous creation but as a refuge, a sanctuary from the cold, uncaring world. I saw the beings not as malevolent entities but as guides, leading me to a higher state of consciousness. They were offering me a choice: embrace the darkness, succumb to my fears and become one of them, or resist, fight against the darkness and face the consequences. The weight of the decision was crushing. I felt myself teetering on the brink of madness, my will to resist fading with each passing moment. The beings chanted louder, their voices weaving a seductive spell, promising power, knowledge, and an end to my suffering. Then I remembered something. A moment of pure joy, a memory of my mother's love, a feeling of warmth and acceptance that had been buried beneath years of pain and resentment. It was a tiny spark of light in the overwhelming darkness, but it was enough. I focused on that memory, clinging to it with all my might. I felt the being's power falter, their control over me weakening. The images in my mind began to fade, replaced by a single, unwavering image of my mother's smiling face. With a surge of defiance, I broke free from their grasp. I landed on the ground, gasping for breath, my body trembling with exhaustion. The beings recoiled, their burning eyes flickering with surprise. "You cannot escape us, Aris Thorne," one of them hissed, its voice laced with anger. "We are a part of you. We will always be a part of you." They lunged towards me, their skeletal hands outstretched, but I was ready. I remembered the diary, the warnings it contained, the secrets it held. I opened it to a random page and began to read aloud, reciting the words with all the force I could muster. The words were nonsensical, a jumble of ancient languages and arcane symbols. But as I spoke them, I felt a surge of power coursing through my body. The beings recoiled, their forms flickering like shadows in the wind. The chamber began to shake, the ice walls groaning under the strain. Cracks appeared in the floor, and the air crackled with energy. I knew that I had unleashed something powerful, something that could destroy us all. Then, with a deafening roar, the city beneath the ice began to collapse. The towers crumbled, the halls shattered, and the beings were swallowed by the falling debris. I stood alone in the darkness, surrounded by the ruins of the city, the diary clutched tightly in my hand. I had survived, but at what cost? I knew that the beings were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike again. And I knew that the darkness within me would never truly be extinguished. But I also knew that I had a choice. I could succumb to the darkness, or I could fight against it, clinging to the light of hope, no matter how faint it might be. As I turned to leave the chamber, I saw something that made my heart sink. Carved into the ice wall was a single word, written in a language I didn't understand, yet somehow knew. Chapter 4: The Language of the Ice. The sight of that single, chilling word etched into the ice sent a fresh wave of fear crashing over me. REDRUM. Murder, spelled backward. A child's terrifying whisper from a world twisted and broken. It was a message, a threat, a promise of more horrors to come. I frantically searched the surrounding walls, desperate to find some explanation, some clue as to who or what had written it. But there was nothing. Only the cold, unyielding ice and the lingering scent of sulfur and decay. The silence after the city's collapse was deafening, broken only by the frantic hammering of my heart. The journal. I remembered the diary clutched in my hand, the diary that had already saved my life once. Perhaps it held the key to understanding this cryptic message. I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning the faded script, searching for any mention of the word, any reference to a similar symbol. After what felt like an eternity, I found it. Tucked away in a corner of one of the later entries was a sketch of the word, written in the same shaky hand. Below the sketch was a brief explanation. The language of the ice. A reflection of our darkest desires, our most primal fears. Beware those who speak it, for they are not of this world. The writer had understood. They had recognized the malevolent force that lurked beneath the surface of the ice, the force that was now hunting me. And they had left this warning, a desperate attempt to protect others from the horrors they had witnessed. But what did it mean? What was the significance of this backward word, and how was it connected to the beings in the city beneath the ice? As I pondered these questions, I noticed something else in the diary entry. A series of symbols, arranged in a circular pattern, surrounding the sketch of the word. They were unlike anything I had ever seen, a bizarre combination of geometric shapes and organic forms. I recognized a few of the symbols from other parts of the diary. They seemed to represent different aspects of the city beneath the ice, its architecture, its inhabitants, its rituals. But one symbol was new, a jagged, lightning bolt-like shape that appeared to be connected to the word REDRUM. Driven by a desperate hope, I copied the symbols onto a separate page in the diary. Perhaps, if I could decipher their meaning, I could find a way to stop whatever was coming. With the symbols copied, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I couldn't stay here, trapped in this charnel house, waiting to become another victim. I had to escape, to warn the others, to find a way to fight back. I turned and began to retrace my steps, following the narrow passage that had led me to this nightmarish place. The climb back up was arduous, my muscles screaming with exhaustion, but I pressed on, fueled by adrenaline and the desperate desire to survive. As I neared the end of the passage, I heard a faint sound coming from the chamber above. A rhythmic chanting, growing louder and more intense with each passing moment. It was the same chant I had heard in the city beneath the ice, the chant that had almost driven me mad. I hesitated, my hand trembling on the wall. Was it a trap? Were the beings waiting for me on the other side, or were the others in danger? I had to know. Gripping the geological hammer tightly, I braced myself and pushed open the section of wall that led back into the chamber. What I saw on the other side sent a wave of nausea washing over me. Lena, Maya, and Jake were standing in the center of the chamber, their eyes vacant, their bodies swaying in unison. They were chanting in the same guttural language I had heard in the city beneath the ice, their voices a distorted chorus of madness. They were no longer human. They had been transformed, corrupted by the malevolent force that had taken root in this place. They had become puppets, controlled by the beings in the city beneath the ice. Lena turned towards me, her eyes burning with an unholy light. "Welcome back, Aris," she said, her voice a chilling mimicry of Lena's own. "We have been waiting for you." The others turned as well, their faces twisted into grotesque smiles. They began to move towards me, their bodies swaying with an unnatural grace. They were closing in, trapping me in a circle of madness. "Join us, Aris," Lena said, her voice seductive and persuasive. "Embrace the darkness, become one with the ice." I knew that if I succumbed, if I allowed them to touch me, I would be lost forever. I would become one of them, a mindless puppet, serving the malevolent force that had taken control of this place. But how could I fight them? They were my friends, my colleagues. I couldn't bring myself to harm them. Then I remembered the diary, the symbols I had copied, the language of the ice. It was my only hope. I raised the diary and began to recite the symbols, my voice trembling with fear and desperation. The others recoiled, their chanting faltering. Lena screamed, a sound of pure agony that echoed through the chamber. "Stop," she shrieked, her voice cracking with pain. "Don't say those words." But I didn't stop. I continued to recite the symbols, my voice growing stronger with each passing moment. The air crackled with energy, and the ice walls began to tremble. Then something extraordinary happened. The chamber began to dissolve. The ice walls melted away, revealing a different reality. The air shimmered and distorted, and the chamber transformed into a familiar place. My childhood bedroom. I was standing in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by my old toys, my old books, my old posters. The others were gone. The chamber was gone. The city beneath the ice was gone. Was it all a dream, a hallucination, a product of my sleep-deprived mind? Then I saw it. Scrawled on the wall above my bed in the same shaky hand as the diary was the word REDRUM. Chapter 5: The Bedroom Mirror. The sudden shift, the jarring transition from the icy chamber to the familiar confines of my childhood bedroom, left me disoriented and reeling. Was it real? Had I truly escaped the clutches of the beings beneath the ice? Or was this just another layer of the nightmare, a meticulously crafted illusion designed to break me further? The REDRUM scrawled on the wall above my bed was undeniably real. The ink was fresh, the letters crude and uneven, as if written in a desperate hurry. It was the same handwriting as the diary, the same chilling message, now haunting my most personal and intimate space. I stumbled towards the wall, my fingers tracing the outline of the letters. A wave of nausea washed over me as I recognized the ink. It wasn't ink at all. It was blood. The realization sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't just a hallucination, a figment of my imagination. Something had followed me here. Something had breached the boundaries of reality and invaded my past. I spun around, scanning the room for any sign of the others, any indication that I wasn't alone. But there was nothing. Only the familiar objects of my childhood. My old teddy bear, my collection of dinosaur toys, my tattered copy of The Hobbit. The room was exactly as I remembered it, yet different. The air was thick with a strange, cloying sweetness, the same sickly sweet odor I had smelled in the ice chamber. The shadows seemed deeper, more menacing, as if something were lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. The clock on my bedside table ticked backwards, each tick a hammer blow against my sanity. Time was fracturing again, the past and present collapsing into a single, terrifying moment. I had to get out of here. I couldn't stay in this room, surrounded by the ghosts of my past, waiting for the darkness to consume me. I rushed towards the door, my hand reaching for the doorknob. But as I touched it, I felt a jolt of static electricity surge through my body. The doorknob was ice cold, freezing to the touch. I recoiled, my heart pounding in my chest. The door was locked, sealed shut by an invisible force. I was trapped. Panic began to set in, a suffocating wave of fear that threatened to overwhelm me. I was back in the charnel house, surrounded by the beings beneath the ice, my mind fracturing under the strain. Then I saw it. In the corner of the room, shrouded in shadow, was a mirror. An antique mirror, its surface clouded with age, its frame intricately carved with grotesque figures. I had never seen that mirror before. It wasn't part of my childhood bedroom. It was something else, something alien and malevolent. As I stared at the mirror, I saw my reflection waver and distort. My face seemed to melt and reform, my features twisting into grotesque parodies of my own. The reflection in the mirror was not me. It was something else, something dark and twisted, something that hungered for my soul. The reflection smiled, a chilling, predatory grin that sent a shiver down my spine. It reached out a hand, its fingers elongated and skeletal, and beckoned me closer. "Come closer, Aris," it whispered, its voice a distorted mimicry of my own. "We have so much to show you." I knew that if I looked into that mirror, if I allowed myself to be consumed by my reflection, I would be lost forever. I would become one with the darkness, a mindless puppet, serving the malevolent force that had created this nightmare. But I couldn't look away. The reflection in the mirror held me captive, its gaze hypnotic and irresistible. I felt myself drawn towards it, my will to resist fading with each passing moment. Then I remembered the diary, the symbols I had copied, the language of the ice. It was my only hope. I closed my eyes, focusing all my energy on the symbols, reciting them in my mind over and over again. The reflection in the mirror wavered, its grip on me loosening. With a surge of defiance, I opened my eyes and stared directly at the reflection. I saw my own fear, my own insecurities, my own repressed desires reflected back at me. But I also saw something else, a spark of light, a glimmer of hope, a refusal to surrender. "You are not me," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "I am not you." The reflection screamed, a sound of pure agony that shattered the mirror into 1,000 pieces. The room plunged into darkness, the cloying sweetness replaced by the sharp, metallic scent of blood. I stood alone in the darkness, the broken shards of the mirror scattered around me. I had survived, but at what cost? I knew that the darkness was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its chance to strike again. And I knew that the battle was far from over. But I also knew that I had the strength to resist, the will to survive. I had faced my demons and emerged victorious, and I would continue to fight, no matter how hopeless the odds. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw something that made my heart leap with hope. The door to my bedroom was open. Chapter 6: The Fractured Station. The open doorway was a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness, a promise of escape from the nightmarish confines of my childhood bedroom. But even as I stepped through the threshold, I knew that I wasn't truly free. The darkness had followed me, seeping into the very fabric of the station, twisting it into a grotesque parody of its former self. The familiar corridors were now warped and distorted, the walls slanting at unnatural angles, the floors uneven and treacherous. The air was thick with the same sickly sweet odor, intensified to an almost unbearable level. The lights flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. The station was no longer a safe haven, a sanctuary from the frozen wasteland outside. It had become a labyrinth of fear, a reflection of my own fractured psyche. As I navigated the twisted corridors, I heard faint sounds coming from the other rooms, whispers, moans, and the rhythmic chanting that had almost driven me mad. The others were still out there, trapped in their own personal nightmares, their minds and bodies corrupted by the malevolent force that had taken root in this place. I had to find them. I had to save them if it was even possible. But how could I fight an enemy that could manipulate reality itself, that could turn my own fears against me? I remembered the diary, the symbols I had copied, the language of the ice. It was my only weapon, my only hope of defeating the darkness and rescuing my friends. I reached my lab, only to find it in shambles. The equipment was smashed, the ice core samples scattered across the floor, the walls covered in strange symbols and blood-painted sigils. The lab was no longer a place of scientific inquiry, but a shrine to madness, a testament to the horrors that had been unleashed upon this place. As I surveyed the wreckage, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a flickering light coming from Lena's lab, the room next to mine. A flicker of hope surged through me. Perhaps she was still alive, still fighting. I cautiously approached Lena's lab, my geological hammer raised and ready. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear faint sounds coming from within. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. What I saw inside sent a wave of despair crashing over me. Lena was standing in the center of the room, her body swaying in unison with Maya and Jake. They were chanting in the same guttural language I had heard before, their voices a distorted chorus of madness. But there was something else. In the center of the room, on a makeshift altar constructed from ice core samples and scientific equipment, was Kurt's body. He was lying naked on the altar, his eyes wide and unseeing, his body covered in strange symbols and ritualistic markings. Lena, Maya, and Jake were performing a ritual, a dark and twisted ceremony designed to appease the beings beneath the ice and strengthen their hold on this reality. Lena turned towards me, her eyes burning with an unholy light. "Welcome, Aris," she said, her voice a chilling mimicry of Lena's own. "We are about to complete the ritual. Join us, and you will be rewarded beyond your wildest dreams." The others turned as well, their faces twisted into grotesque smiles. They began to move towards me, their bodies swaying with an unnatural grace. They were closing in, trapping me in a circle of madness. I knew that I couldn't hesitate. If I allowed them to complete the ritual, if I allowed myself to be consumed by their madness, all would be lost. I had to act, even if it meant sacrificing my friends. I raised the geological hammer and charged towards the altar, determined to disrupt the ritual and free my friends from the darkness that had consumed them. But as I neared the altar, the ground beneath my feet began to tremble. Cracks appeared in the floor, and the air crackled with energy. The station was beginning to crumble, to collapse under the weight of the darkness. Then the lights went out. I was plunged into complete darkness, surrounded by the chanting voices, the swaying bodies, and the overwhelming sense of dread. I could feel the darkness closing in, threatening to consume me, to trap me in this nightmare forever. Then a voice, cold and sharp, echoed from the darkness. "You cannot stop us, Aris Thorne," it hissed. "The ritual is complete. The ice will claim you all." Chapter 7. The Ritual's Echo. The darkness was absolute, a suffocating blanket that pressed in on me from all sides. The chanting intensified, each guttural syllable a hammer blow against my sanity. I could hear the shuffling of feet, the rustling of fabric, the distinct, sickening squelch of bare feet on something wet, something viscous. I knew with a certainty that transcended reason that the ritual was complete. The beings beneath the ice had achieved their goal. They had established a foothold in this reality, and the station, our fragile sanctuary, was now theirs. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the encroaching silence. I gripped the geological hammer tighter, its familiar weight a small comfort in the overwhelming darkness. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there. Lena, Maya, and Jake, their minds and bodies twisted and corrupted, their eyes burning with an unholy light. They were closing in, their movements slow and deliberate like predators stalking their prey. Then a faint light flickered to life. Not the harsh, artificial light of the station, but a soft, ethereal glow that emanated from the altar in the center of the room. The light illuminated Kurt's body, revealing the grotesque symbols carved into his skin, the ritualistic markings that had transformed him into a sacrifice. The light also illuminated Lena, Maya, and Jake. Their faces were contorted in expressions of ecstatic agony, their eyes rolling back in their heads, their bodies swaying with an unnatural grace. They were no longer human. They were vessels, conduits for the malevolent force that had taken root in this place. Lena raised her hands towards the sky, her voice rising above the chanting in a piercing shriek. "The ice remembers," she cried. "The ice hungers." The other two echoed her words, their voices blending together in a horrifying chorus. The chanting intensified, the ethereal light grew brighter, and the air crackled with energy. The station trembled, groaned, and shuddered under the strain. Then the ice itself began to speak. Not in words, but in sounds. Groans, creaks, and whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the station. The sounds grew louder, more intense, until they drowned out the chanting, the shrieks, and even the frantic hammering of my heart. The sounds coalesced into a single, unified voice, a voice that resonated with an ancient power. "You cannot escape us, Aris Thorne," the voice boomed. "You are a part of us. You will always be a part of us." I knew that the voice was right. The darkness had seeped into my soul, twisting my fears and desires, amplifying my insecurities. I was connected to this place, to these beings, in a way that I couldn't escape. But I refused to surrender. I refused to become a mindless puppet, serving the malevolent force that had taken control of this place. I would fight, even if it meant sacrificing myself. I closed my eyes, focusing all my energy on the symbols I had copied from the diary, reciting them in my mind over and over again. The voice grew angrier, more insistent, its power threatening to overwhelm me. Then I remembered something, a detail I had overlooked in the diary, a sentence buried within a longer passage, a clue that could save us all. The lightning bolt symbol, the one connected to the word redrum. I had assumed it represented some aspect of the city beneath the ice, some element of the ritual. But what if I was wrong? What if it represented something else entirely? I opened my eyes, my gaze fixed on Lena. The light from the altar illuminated her face, revealing the grotesque symbols carved into her skin, the same symbols that were now pulsing with an ethereal glow. The lightning bolt symbol was there on her forehead, right above her eyes, and I realized with a sudden clarity what it meant. It wasn't a symbol of the city beneath the ice. It was a symbol of power, the power to control the elements, to manipulate reality itself. And it was connected to the word redrum because that was the price of that power. Murder, the sacrifice of innocent lives. But there was something else, something even more significant. The lightning bolt symbol wasn't just on Lena's forehead. It was also on Maya's and Jake. It was on Kurt's body, on the walls of the lab, and on the ice core samples scattered across the floor. The lightning bolt symbol was everywhere. It was the key to everything, and I knew, with a certainty that transcended reason, what I had to do. I raised the geological hammer and charged towards Lena, determined to destroy the symbol, to break the connection between her and the malevolent force that had taken control of her. But as I neared her, she raised her hands towards me, her eyes burning with an unholy light. "You cannot stop us, Aris Thorne," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "The ice will claim you all." Then she unleashed the power of the lightning bolt symbol. A surge of energy coursed through the air, striking me like a physical blow. I was thrown backwards, landing hard on the floor. The hammer slipped from my grasp, clattering across the ice. The darkness closed in again, threatening to consume me. I could feel my strength fading, my will to resist weakening. Then I heard a familiar voice. A voice I hadn't heard in years. A voice that had been buried beneath layers of pain and resentment. "Aris," the voice said, "don't give up, you can do this." It was my mother's voice. Chapter 8: The Mother's Echo. The sound of my mother's voice, a spectral echo from a past I thought long buried, cut through the oppressive darkness like a shard of light. It was a voice of warmth, of love, of unwavering belief in me, even when I had ceased to believe in myself. For a moment I was transported back to my childhood, to the comforting embrace of her arms, to the feeling of being safe and loved, no matter what terrors lurked in the shadows. The memory was a powerful shield, deflecting the encroaching darkness, bolstering my flagging spirits. But the illusion was fleeting. The chanting intensified, the ethereal light grew brighter, and Lena's voice sliced through the fog of memory, dragging me back to the horrifying reality of the present. "Foolish Aris," she hissed, her voice dripping with contempt. "Do you think the echoes of your past can save you now? We are the future, we are the ice." I struggled to my feet, my body aching, my head spinning. The geological hammer was still out of reach, lost somewhere in the darkness. I was unarmed, vulnerable, facing an enemy that possessed unimaginable power. But I wasn't alone. My mother's voice still echoed in my mind, urging me forward, reminding me of who I was, of what I was capable of. I closed my eyes, focusing all my energy on that voice, on that memory, drawing strength from the love that had sustained me through so many difficult times. And I realized something. The beings beneath the ice, the corrupted Lena, Maya, and Jake, they were feeding on my negative emotions, on my fears, my insecurities, my regrets. But they couldn't touch the positive ones. They couldn't corrupt the love that my mother had given me. That love was my shield, my weapon, my ultimate defense against the darkness, and I knew how to use it. I opened my eyes, my gaze fixed on Lena. I didn't see the monstrous figure that stood before me, the vessel for a malevolent force. I saw Lena Hansen, my colleague, my friend, a brilliant scientist who had been twisted and corrupted by something beyond her control. And I felt a surge of compassion, of empathy, of unwavering hope that I could still save her. "Lena," I said, my voice trembling but resolute, "I know you're in there. I know you can hear me. Fight this. Don't let them control you." My words seemed to have an effect. Lena's chanting faltered, her body stiffened, and a flicker of recognition crossed her face. For a brief moment, I saw the real Lena, trapped beneath the layers of corruption, struggling to break free. "Aris," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the groaning of the station and the incessant chanting of Maya and Jake. "Help me." Her plea was a spark of hope in the overwhelming darkness, a sign that I could still reach her, that I could still save her from the darkness that had consumed her. But the moment was fleeting. The chanting intensified, the ethereal light grew brighter, and Lena's face contorted in agony. The malevolent force that had taken control of her was fighting back, tightening its grip on her mind and body. "Silence," the voice boomed, emanating from Lena's mouth but not her own. "You cannot interfere. The ritual is almost complete." Lena raised her hands towards me, her eyes burning with an unholy light. She was about to unleash the power of the lightning bolt symbol again, to strike me down and silence my defiance. But I was ready. I closed my eyes, focusing all my energy on my mother's voice, on the memory of her love, and I reached out to Lena, not with anger, not with fear, but with compassion, with empathy, with unwavering hope. And I spoke, not in the guttural language of the ice, but in the language of the heart, the language of love, the language that the darkness could not touch. "Lena," I said, "I believe in you. I know you can do this. You are stronger than this. Remember who you are. Remember what you stand for." My words resonated through the darkness, striking a chord within Lena's soul. The chanting faltered, the ethereal light flickered, and Lena's body began to tremble. The malevolent force that had taken control of her was weakening, its power diminishing in the face of my unwavering belief in her. Then something extraordinary happened. Lena's eyes opened and I saw her. The real Lena, the brilliant scientist, the loyal friend, the woman who had been lost in the darkness for so long. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pain but also with determination. "Aris," she said, her voice weak but clear, "thank you, I know what I have to do." And with that, Lena turned towards the altar, her gaze fixed on Kurt's body, on the lightning bolt symbol that had been carved into his skin. She raised her hands towards the altar, not in a gesture of supplication, but in a gesture of defiance. Then she unleashed a power of her own. Chapter 9: The Breaking of the Sigil. Instead of the expected surge of dark energy, a wave of pure white light erupted from Lena. It wasn't a weapon, not in the conventional sense. It was a wave of concentrated willpower, of unwavering determination, of the very essence of her being, focused on a single, desperate act. The light slammed into the altar, engulfing Kurt's body in a blinding radiance. The lightning bolt symbol, the sigil that had bound the station to the malevolent force beneath the ice, began to crack and crumble. The chanting of Maya and Jake faltered, their bodies jerking as if struck by an invisible force. The ethereal light that had illuminated the lab flickered and died, plunging the room into near-total darkness. The voice of the ice roared in fury, its power diminishing as the sigil weakened. "You cannot destroy us," it bellowed. "We are eternal." But Lena didn't waver. She poured all of her remaining strength into the act, her body trembling, her face contorted in agony. The white light intensified, consuming the altar, the ritualistic markings, and even Kurt's body. Then with a deafening crack, the lightning bolt symbol shattered. The white light vanished and the room fell silent. For a moment there was nothing, only the darkness, the groaning of the station, and the frantic hammering of my heart. I couldn't see Lena, couldn't hear her, couldn't feel her presence. Had she succeeded? Had she destroyed the sigil and broken the connection to the malevolent force beneath the ice? Or had she simply sacrificed herself in vain, leaving us all to the mercy of the darkness? Then I heard a faint cough. "Lena," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the groaning of the station. "I'm here," she replied, her voice weak but clear. "I did it, it's gone." Relief washed over me, so intense that it almost brought me to my knees. Lena had succeeded. She had broken the sigil and severed the connection to the malevolent force. We were free. But the victory was bittersweet. I couldn't see her, couldn't know the extent of her injuries, and I knew that the battle was far from over. The station was still crumbling, the darkness still lingered, and Maya and Jake were still under the influence of the malevolent force. "Lena, are you okay?" I asked. "Can you move?" I don't know," she replied. "I'm weak, I need help." I fumbled in the darkness, trying to find my way towards her. But the lab was a mess, littered with broken equipment and scattered ice core samples. I stumbled and fell, hitting my head on something hard. Pain shot through my skull, and I felt myself losing consciousness. The darkness closed in again, threatening to consume me. Then I heard a voice. "Aris, over here." It was Maya. I blinked, trying to clear my vision. I could see her, dimly illuminated by a faint light emanating from her hands. She was standing near the doorway, her face pale but determined, her eyes clear and focused. She had broken free. "Maya, what happened?" I asked. "What about Jake?" "It's gone, Aris," she replied. "The influence, it's gone, but Jake, he's—" Her voice trailed off, and I saw her gaze shift towards the corner of the room. I followed her gaze and saw Jake, lying motionless on the floor. He was dead. Despair washed over me, threatening to drag me back into the darkness. We had won a battle, but we had lost so much in the process. "We have to get out of here, Aris," Maya said, her voice firm but urgent. "The station is collapsing. There's not much time." She was right. The groaning of the station was growing louder, the tremors more intense. The darkness was closing in, threatening to bury us all alive. We had to escape. We had to survive. We had to carry on to honor the memory of those we had lost. With Maya's help, I stumbled to my feet. We made our way towards Lena, who was still lying near the altar. We helped her to her feet, supporting her on either side. Together, the three of us staggered towards the doorway, determined to escape the crumbling station and face whatever horrors awaited us in the frozen wasteland outside. As we reached the doorway, I turned back for one last look at the lab, at the altar, at the body of Kurt, at the broken remnants of the ritual that had almost destroyed us all. And I saw something that made my blood run cold. Carved into the wall above the altar in the same shaky hand as the diary was a new word. Chapter 10, The Whispers Beyond the Walls. The single word, awake, pulsed with a malevolent energy, radiating from the wall like a beacon in the encroaching darkness. It was a chilling pronouncement, a terrifying suggestion that the horrors we had faced were merely a prelude to something far greater, far more terrifying. It mocked our victory, turning it into a Pyrrhic one. The sigil might be broken, but the force it contained was now, perhaps, unbound and searching. I tore my gaze away from the wall, forcing myself to focus on the immediate danger. The station was groaning under immense pressure, the twisted metal screaming in protest as the ice pressed in from all sides. We had to get out, and quickly. "Let's go," I urged, pulling Lena and Maya towards the exit. We stumbled through the warped corridors, the air growing colder, the groaning louder. Sections of the ceiling collapsed, showering us with ice and debris. The flickering lights threatened to extinguish entirely, leaving us blind in the maze of twisted metal and shattered glass. Despite her weakened state, Lena moved with surprising determination, her face set in a grim mask of resolve. Maya, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and adrenaline, guided us through the darkness, her instincts honed by years of surviving in the unforgiving Arctic environment. We reached the main access tunnel, the passage that led to the surface of the ice sheet. The tunnel was partially collapsed, blocked by a wall of ice and debris. "We'll have to clear it," Maya said, her voice tight with urgency. "There's no other way out." Working together, we began to remove the debris, our hands raw and bleeding from the cold and the sharp edges of the ice. The task was arduous, our progress slow and painful. As we worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The darkness seemed to press in on us, the silence broken only by the groaning of the station and the frantic hammering of our hearts. The whispers had returned, faint and indistinct, but undeniably present, swirling around us like a malevolent wind. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely audible above the din. "The whispers, they're back." Lena and Maya exchanged worried glances. "I don't hear anything," Lena said, her brow furrowed. "Maybe it's just the wind," Maya added, her voice strained. But I knew it wasn't the wind. It was something else, something alien and malevolent, something that was lurking just beyond the edge of our perception. The whispers seemed to be calling my name, beckoning me towards the darkness, promising knowledge and power beyond my wildest dreams. I tried to ignore them to focus on the task at hand, but they grew louder, more insistent, their voices weaving a seductive spell that threatened to ensnare my mind. The darkness seemed to be pulling me towards it, whispering promises of oblivion and escape. Then I saw it, a figure standing in the shadows at the far end of the tunnel. It was tall and gaunt, its form distorted and indistinct. It was beckoning me towards it, its movement slow and deliberate, like a predator luring its prey into a trap. "There," I cried, pointing towards the figure. "Do you see it? The thing at the end of the tunnel." Lena and Maya followed my gaze, their faces paling with fear. I don't see anything," Lena said, her voice trembling. "Are you sure, Aris?" Maya asked, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you all right?" I realized with a jolt of horror that they couldn't see it. The figure, the whispers, the darkness, they were all in my mind. The malevolent force hadn't been banished. It had simply retreated, biding its time, waiting for an opportunity to strike again. And now it was targeting me. It was using my fears, my insecurities, my regrets to lure me into its grasp. It was trying to isolate me from my friends, to break my will, to turn me into a puppet of the darkness. I knew that if I succumbed, if I allowed myself to be consumed by the darkness, all would be lost. Lena and Maya would be left to face the horrors alone, and the malevolent force would be free to spread its influence across the world. I couldn't let that happen. I had to fight back, to resist the darkness, to protect my friends, even if it meant sacrificing myself. I closed my eyes, focusing all my energy on the memory of my mother's love, on the unwavering belief that Lena and Maya had placed in me, and I spoke to the figure in the darkness, my voice trembling but resolute. "I will not surrender," I cried. "I will not give in to your darkness. I will fight you until my last breath." My words seemed to have an effect. The whispers faltered, the figure recoiled, and the darkness seemed to recede slightly. The malevolent force had been challenged, and for the first time it seemed uncertain. Emboldened by my defiance, I opened my eyes and charged towards the figure, determined to confront it, to banish it from my mind, to reclaim my sanity. But as I neared the figure, it began to change. Its form shifted and distorted, morphing into something grotesque and horrifying. It was no longer a shadowy figure lurking in the darkness. It was a reflection of my own deepest fears, my own darkest desires, my own repressed guilt. It was me. Chapter 11: The Mirror Within. The monstrous figure before me mirrored my own features, yet twisted into a grotesque caricature. My eyes burned with an unholy light, my mouth stretched into a chilling, predatory grin, my skin pallid and decaying. It was a reflection of the darkness that lurked within my soul, the darkness that I had tried so hard to suppress. The monstrous me spoke, its voice a distorted echo of my own, laced with malice and contempt. "Foolish Aris," it hissed. "Do you think you can escape your own nature? We are the same. We are two sides of the same coin. You cannot destroy me without destroying yourself." The words struck me like a physical blow, shaking my resolve to its core. Was it true? Was I destined to become a monster, a puppet of the darkness? Was there no escape from the horrors that lurked within my own mind? I hesitated, my body frozen in place, my mind reeling with doubt and despair. The monstrous me took a step forward, its hand reaching out to touch me. Its touch was cold and clammy, like the touch of death itself. Then I heard Lena's voice, clear and strong, cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. "Aris, don't listen to it, it's lying. You are not a monster. You are a good man. You can fight this." Her words snapped me out of my paralysis. I looked at Lena and Maya, their faces etched with worry and determination. They believed in me. They trusted me. They knew that I was capable of overcoming the darkness that threatened to consume me. Their belief gave me strength, bolstering my flagging spirits, reminding me of who I was, of what I stood for. I was not a monster. I was a scientist, a friend, a survivor, and I would not let the darkness define me. I raised my head, meeting the monstrous me's gaze with unwavering defiance. "You are wrong," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "I am not you. I am Aris Thorne, and I will not be controlled by your darkness." The monstrous me snarled, its face contorting in rage. "Then you will die," it shrieked, its voice rising to a deafening crescendo. It lunged towards me, its claws extended, its eyes burning with hatred. I braced myself for the impact, preparing to fight for my life. But as it neared me, something unexpected happened. The monstrous me began to fade, its form flickering like a dying flame. Its features softened, its expression changed from rage to despair. It reached out to me, not with claws but with a human hand filled with longing and regret. "Help me," it whispered, its voice barely audible above the groaning of the station. "I don't want to be like this." I hesitated for a moment, torn between fear and compassion. Was it a trick? Was it trying to lure me into a trap? Or was it truly seeking redemption? I looked at Lena and Maya, seeking their guidance. They nodded, their eyes filled with understanding and support. They trusted me to make the right decision. With a deep breath, I reached out and took the monstrous me's hand. As our hands touched, a surge of energy coursed through my body, stronger and more intense than anything I had ever experienced before. I felt my mind merging with the monstrous me's, experiencing its pain, its fear, its regret. I saw its memories, its darkest secrets, its most repressed desires. I saw the events that had led to its creation, the traumas that had shaped its existence, the choices that had sealed its fate. And I understood. The monstrous me wasn't an alien entity, a malevolent force from another dimension. It was a part of me, a manifestation of my own inner demons, my own repressed pain. It was the embodiment of my guilt, my fear, my self-loathing. It was me. But it didn't have to be. I closed my eyes, focusing all my energy on the love that my mother had given me, on the belief that Lena and Maya had placed in me, and I reached out to the monstrous me, not with judgment, but with compassion, with empathy, with forgiveness. And I spoke, not in the language of fear, but in the language of hope, the language of redemption, the language that could heal even the deepest wounds. "I forgive you," I said, my voice filled with sincerity. "I forgive myself." As I spoke those words, the energy between us shifted. The pain began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace, of acceptance, of liberation. The monstrous me began to dissolve, its form flickering and fading until it disappeared completely. I stood alone in the tunnel, exhausted but exhilarated, my heart filled with a sense of profound relief. The darkness had retreated, the whispers had silenced, and the monstrous me was gone, finally laid to rest. I had faced my demons and emerged victorious. I had conquered my own inner darkness and reclaimed my sanity. And I knew, with a certainty that transcended reason, that I was ready to face whatever horrors awaited us in the frozen wasteland outside. I turned to Lena and Maya, my face beaming with hope. "It's gone," I said. "I did it. We're safe." But as I spoke those words, the station lurched violently, throwing us to the ground. A deafening roar echoed through the tunnel, and the walls began to collapse. We were running out of time. Chapter 12: The Frozen Wasteland. The lurch of the station nearly sent us sprawling. Debris rained down, the tunnel groaning as though about to fully collapse. Maya, ever resourceful, was first on her feet, helping Lena and me back up. The tunnel, once our potential escape, was now a death trap. "We have to move, now," Maya screamed over the cacophony. Adrenaline surged through me, pushing back the exhaustion. We scrambled towards the end of the tunnel, dodging falling debris, the whispers seemingly gone, replaced by the immediate threat of being crushed. We reached the end, shoving aside a final barrier of ice, and stumbled out into the Arctic wasteland. The biting wind hit us like a physical blow, the cold so intense it felt like needles piercing our skin. The sky was a canvas of swirling gray, offering no respite from the elements. The landscape was a monochrome expanse of ice and snow, stretching as far as the eye could see. We were utterly exposed, vulnerable in the face of nature's fury. But the station, it was worse than I imagined. The prefab modules buckled and twisted, with sections already submerged in the ice. The once proud Outpost 31 was now a mangled ruin, disappearing beneath the unforgiving ice sheet, a fitting grave for what it had unleashed. "We need to find shelter," Lena said, shivering despite her heavy parka. "Hypothermia will set in quickly." Maya, her face etched with concern, pointed towards a distant ridge. There's a small ice cave about a mile that way. It's not much, but it'll offer some protection from the wind. The ice cave was our only hope. We set off towards the ridge, trudging through the knee-deep snow, the wind tearing at our faces. Each step was a struggle, our bodies weakened by exhaustion and trauma. The vastness of the landscape was disorienting, making it difficult to judge distances. The ice cave, a seemingly small dot in the distance, felt impossibly far away. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The landscape was desolate and barren, yet I sensed a presence, a malevolent intelligence observing our every move. The silence was unsettling, broken only by the howling wind and the crunch of our boots on the snow. "Do you feel that?" I asked, my voice hushed. "Like something watching us?" Lena and Maya exchanged nervous glances. "I don't feel anything," Lena said, her voice strained. "But I don't like this silence, it's too unnatural." I scanned the horizon, my eyes searching for any sign of danger, but there was nothing, only the endless expanse of ice and snow. Then I saw it, a dark shape moving in the distance on the crest of a nearby hill. It was small and indistinct, but there was no mistaking it. It was a figure standing motionless, watching us. "There," I cried, pointing towards the figure. "Do you see it now, on the hill?" Lena and Maya followed my gaze, their faces paling with fear. "What is it?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I said, "but I don't think it's friendly." As we watched, the figure began to move. It glided down the hill, its movements fluid and unnatural, like a skater gliding across the ice. It was heading towards us, its purpose unmistakable. "We need to get to that ice cave," Maya said, her voice urgent. "Now." We broke into a run, our bodies screaming in protest. The figure was gaining on us, its movements growing faster, more erratic. It was closing the distance, its intentions clear. Then the ground began to tremble. The ice beneath our feet cracked and groaned, the landscape shifting and distorting. A chasm opened up in front of us, cutting off our path to the ice cave. We were trapped, surrounded by the darkness, the whispers, and the monstrous figure that was now bearing down on us. The monstrous figure stopped at the edge of the chasm, its face contorted into a chilling grin. It raised its hands towards us, its eyes burning with an unholy light. "You cannot escape us," it hissed, its voice a distorted echo of my own. "The ice has claimed you, you will all become one with us." I knew that this was it. This was the end. We were trapped in the frozen wasteland, facing a monstrous enemy that we couldn't defeat. We were about to become victims of the darkness, our souls consumed by the malevolent force that had been unleashed upon this world. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, I refused to give up. I would fight to the end to protect my friends, to defy the darkness, even if it meant sacrificing myself. I grabbed Lena and Maya by the hands, pulling them close. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice filled with regret. "I should have known better. I should have stopped this before it started." "It's not your fault, Aris," Lena said, her voice choked with emotion. "We're in this together, we'll face it together." "We love you, Aris," Maya added, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for trying to save us." Their words gave me strength, reminding me of the love and friendship that had sustained me through so many difficult times. I would not let their sacrifices be in vain. I would face the darkness with courage and determination, and I would do everything in my power to protect them. I turned towards the monstrous figure, my eyes filled with defiance. "Come and get us," I said, my voice ringing out across the frozen wasteland. "We're not afraid of you anymore." The monstrous figure roared in fury and leaped across the chasm, its claws extended, its eyes burning with hatred. But as it landed, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath its feet gave way, and it plunged into the chasm, disappearing into the darkness below. Its screams echoed through the air, fading into silence. We stood at the edge of the chasm, staring into the darkness, our hearts pounding in our chests. Had it truly been defeated, or was it merely biding its time, waiting for an opportunity to strike again? Then we heard a voice, faint and distant but undeniably present. It was my mother's voice. "Aris," she whispered, "look up." Chapter 13. The Aurora's Embrace. My mother's voice, faint and ethereal, guided my gaze upwards. I lifted my eyes to the sky, expecting to see more swirling gray, more evidence of the storm that had trapped us in this frozen hell. But instead, I witnessed a spectacle of breathtaking beauty. The storm clouds had parted, revealing a sky ablaze with color. The aurora borealis, the northern lights, danced above us in shimmering waves of green, purple, and gold. The ethereal light illuminated the landscape, transforming the desolate wasteland into a scene of otherworldly beauty. Lena and Maya gasped in awe, their faces lit by the celestial display. The aurora seemed to wash over us, cleansing us of the darkness, filling us with a sense of peace and serenity. "It's beautiful," Lena whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "Like a sign," Maya added, her eyes wide with amazement. "Like something watching over us." The aurora pulsed and shimmered, its colors shifting and changing in a mesmerizing dance. It seemed to be responding to our presence, communicating with us in a language that transcended words. Then I saw it, a pattern within the aurora, a distinct formation that stood out from the swirling colors. It was a symbol, a familiar symbol that I had seen before. The lightning bolt symbol. It pulsed with an intense energy, radiating from the sky like a beacon. But this time it was different. It wasn't the dark, twisted symbol that had haunted the station. It was a symbol of pure, white light, a symbol of hope, a symbol of redemption. I realized with a sudden clarity that the aurora wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It was something more, something ancient and powerful, something that had been awakened by the events in the station. It was the force that had been trapped beneath the ice, the force that had been twisted and corrupted by the malevolent entity that had taken root in this place. But now, with the sigil broken, with the darkness banished, it was free. And it was reaching out to us, offering us its protection, guiding us towards a new beginning. "Do you see it?" I asked, pointing towards the lightning bolt symbol in the aurora. "The symbol, it's there in the sky." Lena and Maya followed my gaze, their faces lighting up with recognition. "I see it," Lena said, her voice filled with awe. "What does it mean?" "I don't know for sure," I said, "but I think it's trying to tell us something. I think it's trying to guide us." The lightning bolt symbol began to move, drifting across the sky, leading us towards a distant mountain range. It was beckoning us to follow it, promising us salvation in the midst of the frozen wasteland. We looked at each other, our eyes filled with hope and determination. We knew that the journey would be long and arduous, filled with dangers and challenges. But we also knew that we weren't alone. We had each other, and we had the aurora, guiding us towards a brighter future. "Let's go," I said, my voice filled with resolve. "Let's follow the light." We set off towards the mountain range, our steps lighter, our spirits lifted by the beauty and the promise of the aurora. The wind still howled, the cold still bit at our skin, but we no longer felt the crushing weight of despair. We walked for hours, the aurora guiding us through the darkness, its presence a constant source of comfort and inspiration. As we neared the mountain range, the landscape began to change. The ice sheet gave way to rocky terrain, dotted with patches of vegetation. We had reached the edge of the frozen wasteland, the beginning of a new world, a new life. We climbed through the rocky terrain, the ascent slow and difficult, our bodies weakened by exhaustion. But we pressed on, driven by hope and the promise of salvation. As we reached the summit of the mountain range, we gasped in amazement. Before us lay a valley, lush and green, sheltered from the harsh winds of the Arctic. A river flowed through the valley, its waters teeming with life. It was an oasis, a paradise in the midst of the frozen wasteland. It was a testament to the power of nature, the resilience of life, the enduring hope that even in the darkest of times there is always light. We descended into the valley, our hearts filled with gratitude and relief. We had survived the horrors of Outpost 31, we had conquered our inner demons, and we had found our way to a new beginning. We reached the riverbank and knelt down, drinking the clear, refreshing water. It tasted like life, like hope, like redemption. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Floating in the river, bobbing gently in the current, was a single ice core sample. Chapter 14, The River's Offering. The sight of the ice core sample, adrift in the pristine river, shattered the fragile peace we had found in the oasis. It was a chilling reminder of the horrors we had endured, a malevolent echo of the darkness that had almost consumed us. It served as a cruel confirmation that some terrors were unavoidable. I recoiled from the river, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers returned, faint and insidious, swirling around me like a venomous mist. Was this sanctuary a lie? Had we truly escaped the malevolent force, or had it merely lured us into another trap? Lena and Maya noticed my distress, their faces etched with worry. "What is it, Aris?" Lena asked, her voice tense. "What's wrong?" I pointed towards the river, my hand trembling. "The ice core sample, it's here. It followed us." Lena and Maya followed my gaze, their eyes widening with horror as they recognized the object bobbing in the water. The color drained from their faces, replaced by a chilling pallor. The serenity of the oasis seemed to evaporate, replaced by a suffocating sense of dread. "How is that possible?" Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. "We destroyed the sigil, we banished the darkness. It shouldn't be here." "I don't know," I said, my mind racing. "But it's here, and that means it's not over. It's never really over, is it?" The ice core sample drifted closer, its presence growing more menacing with each passing moment. It seemed to be beckoning us, calling us back to the darkness, promising us answers to questions we didn't want to ask. Then I noticed something else. Etched into the surface of the ice core sample, in the same shaky hand as the diary, was another word. The word hung in the air, a chilling accusation, a devastating revelation. What lie was it referring to? The lie of safety, the lie of hope, or something far more profound, something that threatened to unravel the very fabric of our reality? "It's a trick," I said, my voice filled with desperation. "It's trying to deceive us. We can't trust it." But even as I spoke those words, I knew that it was too late. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it was already taking root in my mind. What if everything we had believed, everything we had fought for, was based on a lie? What if the Aurora wasn't a benevolent force, guiding us towards salvation? What if it was just another manipulation, another illusion designed to lure us into a trap? What if my mother's voice, the voice that had sustained me through so many difficult times, wasn't real? What if it was just a figment of my imagination, a product of my own fractured psyche? The questions swirled in my mind, threatening to overwhelm me, to drag me back into the darkness. I looked at Lena and Maya, seeking reassurance, seeking guidance. But their faces were blank, their eyes filled with doubt and confusion. The malevolent force was still at work, twisting our fears and insecurities, preying on our vulnerabilities. It hadn't been banished. It had simply gone dormant, waiting for an opportunity to strike again. And now it had found its opportunity. It had planted the seed of doubt, and it was watching, waiting, as we slowly succumbed to its influence. I knew that I had to do something to break the cycle of fear and despair, to reclaim my sanity. But what could I do? How could I fight an enemy that could manipulate reality itself, that could turn my own mind against me? Then I remembered the diary, the source of the words redrum and awake. I remembered the symbols I had copied, the language of the ice. It was my only weapon, my only hope. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the tattered diary. I flipped through the pages, searching for some clue, some explanation, some guidance. Then I found it, a single sentence buried within a longer passage, a warning that I had overlooked. "Beware the river," the writer had scrawled. "It reflects not the truth but the desires of the heart." I looked at the river, at the ice core sample floating in its currents, and I realized the truth. The river wasn't a source of life, of hope, of redemption. It was a mirror, reflecting our own desires, our own fears, our own lies. The ice core sample wasn't a threat, an emissary of the malevolent force. It was a reflection of our own inner darkness, our own lingering doubts. It was a reminder that we could never truly escape our past, that we could never fully cleanse ourselves of the darkness that lurked within. I understood, finally, what I had to do. I had to confront my own inner darkness, to accept my past, to forgive myself for my failures. I had to let go of my fears, my doubts, my lies, and embrace the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. I walked towards the river, my heart filled with a mixture of fear and determination. I reached out, my hand trembling, and grasped the ice core sample. As my fingers touched the ice, a surge of energy coursed through my body, stronger and more intense than anything I had ever experienced before. I saw my life flash before my eyes, every joy, every sorrow, every triumph, every failure. Then I saw the truth. Chapter 15, Truth in the Frozen Heart. The flood of memories, the overwhelming surge of emotions, threatened to drown me in the depths of my own mind. Every moment of my life, every decision I had made, every word I had spoken, played out before me in vivid detail. I saw my triumphs and my failures, my loves and my losses, my hopes and my regrets. It was as if I was reliving my entire existence in a single, terrifying instant. Then the chaos subsided, and a single, undeniable truth emerged from the maelstrom. A truth so profound, so devastating, that it threatened to shatter my very being. The oasis, it wasn't real. The lush valley, the pristine river, the protective mountains, all of it was an illusion, a carefully constructed fabrication designed to comfort and deceive us. The aurora, a pretty but dangerous distraction. There was no paradise waiting for us, no sanctuary from the horrors we had endured. The comforting image of my mother's face, mimicry. It had been a monster in disguise, mimicking a dead loved one. Nothing is real. We were still trapped, not in a physical prison of ice and metal, but in a psychological cage of our own making. The malevolent force hadn't been banished. It had simply changed its tactics, preying on our hopes and desires, leading us down a path of false salvation. The ice core sample wasn't a reminder of our past. It was a signpost to our future. A future of endless torment, of perpetual deception, of a reality twisted and distorted beyond recognition. The monster was us, all along. The realization struck me like a physical blow, leaving me gasping for breath, my mind reeling with despair. I wanted to scream, to rage, to lash out at the forces that had manipulated and deceived us. But I couldn't. I was too weak, too broken, too consumed by grief. Then I felt a touch on my shoulder. Lena stood beside me, her eyes filled with sorrow and understanding. "I know," she said, her voice barely audible. "I saw it too." Maya nodded, her face etched with a mixture of pain and resignation. "We all did," she said. "It's a lie, all of it." Their words, spoken with such quiet conviction, shook me out of my stupor. They had seen the truth just as I had. They had experienced the same flood of memories, the same devastating realization. And yet they hadn't succumbed to despair. They were still standing, still fighting, still offering me their support. I realized that I wasn't alone. We were all victims of this deception, all prisoners of our own minds. But we were also survivors, bound together by our shared trauma, our unwavering determination to resist the darkness. I looked at Lena and Maya, my heart swelling with gratitude and admiration. They were stronger than I had ever imagined, their spirits unbowed by the horrors we had endured. They were my friends, my comrades, my saviors. And I knew what we had to do. We couldn't stay here, trapped in this illusory paradise, waiting to be consumed by despair. We had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. We had to break free from the cycle of deception and find our own way to salvation. I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. "We have to leave," I said, my voice ringing with newfound conviction. "We have to get out of here." Lena and Maya nodded in agreement. "Where do we go?" Lena asked, her eyes filled with hope. I looked towards the horizon, my gaze searching for some sign, some guidance. The aurora had faded, leaving the sky a cold, indifferent gray. The mountain range loomed behind us, a barrier to our escape. The river flowed onward, its currents carrying the ice core sample towards an unknown destination. "I don't know," I said, "but we can't stay here. We have to keep moving. We have to keep fighting." We turned our backs on the oasis, on the lie of paradise, and began to walk. Our steps were slow and hesitant at first, our bodies still weakened by exhaustion and trauma. But as we moved forward, our pace quickened, our spirits lifted by a renewed sense of purpose. We were lost, alone, and surrounded by danger, but we were free. Free from the deception, free from the illusion, free to forge our own destiny. We walked for days, our journey taking us through treacherous terrain, across frozen plains, and through howling blizzards. We faced hunger, thirst, and exhaustion. We battled the elements, our bodies pushed to the breaking point. But we never gave up. We kept moving forward, driven by the hope that somewhere, somehow, we would find a way to escape the darkness and reclaim our lives. Then, one morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, we saw something in the distance. A structure, small and indistinct but undeniably present. It was a building, standing alone in the midst of the frozen wasteland. Hope surged through me, almost overwhelming in its intensity. Could it be? Had we finally found a safe haven, a place to rest, a place to rebuild our lives? We quickened our pace, our hearts pounding with anticipation. As we drew closer, we could make out the details of the building. It was a small wooden cabin, its walls weathered and worn, its roof covered in snow. A thin wisp of smoke rose from the chimney, a sign of life, a promise of warmth and shelter. We reached the cabin, our bodies trembling with exhaustion. The door was ajar, beckoning us to enter. We hesitated for a moment, our minds filled with doubt and suspicion. Could this be real? Or was it just another illusion, another deception designed to lure us into a trap? Then we heard a voice from inside the cabin, a voice that sent a chill down my spine. "Come in," the voice said. "We've been waiting for you." Chapter 16. The Cabin's Embrace. A wave of apprehension washed over me, colder than the Arctic wind. The voice, it was familiar, yet distorted like an echo from a forgotten nightmare. Was it a trap? Had we stumbled into the lair of some new, even more terrifying horror? Lena and Maya exchanged uneasy glances. The relief that had buoyed us mere moments ago vanished, replaced by a palpable sense of dread. The small cabin, so welcoming from a distance, now seemed menacing, a silent sentinel guarding a dark secret. "We should be careful," Lena whispered, her hand instinctively reaching for the makeshift ice axe she had fashioned. "Agreed," Maya murmured, her eyes scanning the surrounding landscape for any sign of danger. Despite our apprehension, we knew we couldn't stay outside in the elements. Hypothermia was a real threat, and we were running on fumes. The promise of warmth and shelter, however illusory it might prove, was too tempting to resist. With cautious steps, I pushed the door open wider and stepped inside, Lena and Maya close behind. The interior of the cabin was small and sparsely furnished. A rough-hewn table stood in the center of the room, surrounded by 3 chairs. A fireplace crackled merrily in one corner, casting a warm glow over the scene. An old woman sat in a rocking chair near the fireplace, her face obscured by shadows. She was wrapped in a thick woolen shawl, her hands gnarled and wrinkled, her eyes— I couldn't see her eyes. "Welcome," she said, her voice raspy but strangely soothing. "I've been expecting you." I tensed, my senses on high alert. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice guarded. "How did you know we were coming?" The old woman chuckled, a dry, rattling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Patience, child," she said. "All will be revealed in time. For now, come warm yourselves by the fire. You must be freezing." Despite my instincts screaming at me to flee, I couldn't deny the allure of the warmth. Lena and Maya felt it too. We cautiously approached the fireplace, our eyes never leaving the old woman. The heat was intoxicating, easing the ache in our frozen limbs, thawing our numb fingers. As we warmed ourselves, I took a closer look at the cabin. It was meticulously clean, almost unnervingly so. There were no personal items, no photographs, no books, nothing to indicate who this old woman was or how long she had been living here. The air was thick with the scent of pine and something else, something familiar, yet unsettling. It was the same sickly sweet odor I had smelled at Outpost 31, the odor of sulfur and decay. "What is this place?" Lena asked, her voice barely a whisper. The old woman chuckled again. "This is a sanctuary, child," she said. "A haven from the storms, a place where you can find peace." "Peace?" I scoffed, unable to contain my skepticism. "After everything we've been through, after everything we've lost." The old woman's head tilted slightly. "Loss is a part of life, child," she said, "but it doesn't have to define you. You can choose to dwell on the darkness, or you can choose to embrace the light." "What light?" I retorted, my voice laced with bitterness. "There is no light, only darkness." The old woman slowly lifted her head, her face emerging from the shadows. Her eyes, they were milky white, completely devoid of sight. Blind. But even without sight, she seemed to see right through me, peering into the depths of my soul. "You are wrong, Aris Thorne," she said, her voice soft but firm. "There is always light, even in the darkest of places. You just have to know where to look." A shiver ran down my spine. How did she know my name? How did she know about my doubts, my fears, my lingering connection to the darkness? Who was this old woman, and what did she want from us? "Enough with the riddles," I said, my voice rising in anger. "Tell me who you are and why you brought us here." The old woman smiled, a gentle, almost pitying smile. "I am simply a caretaker, Aris," she said, "a guardian of this place, and I brought you here because you need my help." "Help?" I scoffed. "We don't need your help, we just need to get out of here." The old woman sighed. "You cannot leave, child," she said. "Not yet, you are not ready. The darkness still clings to you, you must be cleansed." "Cleansed?" Lena interjected, her voice filled with alarm. "What do you mean, cleansed?" The old woman's smile widened, revealing a row of yellowed, unsettling teeth. "There is a ritual," she said, her voice taking on a new, more sinister tone. "A cleansing ritual that will purify your souls. It will be painful, but it is necessary." "A ritual?" Maya gasped, her face paling with fear. "No, we're not doing any rituals." The old woman rose slowly from her rocking chair, her movements stiff and deliberate. She was taller than I had initially thought, her presence commanding, almost intimidating. Her blind eyes seemed to bore into me, seeing not my physical form but the darkness within. "You have no choice," she said, her voice devoid of all warmth. "The ritual must be performed for your own good and for the good of all." Then she spoke, her voice dropping to a guttural whisper, words forming in a language I didn't understand, yet somehow knew. It was the language of the ice. And as she spoke, the cabin began to transform. The walls seemed to shift and distort, the furniture twisted into grotesque shapes, the fireplace sputtered and died, plunging the room into darkness. The scent of pine was replaced by the overwhelming stench of sulfur and decay. The old woman was no longer an old woman. She was something else, something ancient, something malevolent, something utterly terrifying. The false safety of the cabin had vanished, replaced by the chilling reality of our situation. We were trapped, not in a sanctuary but in a prison, and the caretaker was about to become our executioner. "Run!" I screamed, grabbing Lena and Maya by the hands. But it was too late. The cabin door slammed shut, plunging us into darkness. Chapter 17: The Heart of the Blizzard. Darkness descended, thick and suffocating. The warmth of the hearth vanished, replaced by a bone-chilling cold that seeped into our very marrow. The cabin, once a promise of refuge, had become a tomb. "Lena, Maya, where are you?" I shouted, my voice barely audible above the howling wind that seemed to rage just outside the thin wooden walls. "We're here, Aris." Lena's voice was strained, laced with fear. "But I can't see anything." "Stay close." Maya's voice was equally panicked. "Don't let go of each other." We fumbled blindly through the darkness, our hands outstretched, searching for each other, for any means of escape. The air grew heavy, thick with the sickeningly sweet odor that had haunted us since Outpost 31. Then I felt something brush against my hand, cold, smooth, scaly. I recoiled in horror, my heart leaping into my throat. What was that? A guttural chuckle echoed through the darkness, sending shivers down my spine. "Lost little ones." The old woman's voice crooned, warped and distorted, barely recognizable. "Don't worry, I'll show you the way." Something grabbed my arm, its grip like a vice. I struggled to break free, but it was too strong, pulling me deeper into the darkness. "Lena, Maya, help me!" I screamed, my voice filled with terror. Then I heard a piercing scream, followed by the sound of a struggle. "Lena!" "Get away from her!" Maya's voice was a roar of defiance. More struggling, more screams, and then silence. "Lena, Maya, answer me!" I shouted, my voice cracking with desperation. Only silence answered me. The grip on my arm tightened, pulling me forward inexorably towards an unknown fate. I stumbled blindly through the darkness, the wind howling in my ears, the old woman's laughter ringing in my mind. Then I saw it, a faint light shimmering in the distance like a beacon in the abyss. Hope surged through me, pushing back the despair that threatened to consume me. I had to reach that light. I had to save my friends. I redoubled my efforts, pulling against the force that was dragging me forward. The grip on my arm loosened slightly, and I seized the opportunity, wrenching myself free. I stumbled towards the light, my body trembling with exhaustion and fear. As I drew closer, I could make out the source of the illumination. It was a circle of candles, arranged on the floor of the cabin, their flames flickering and dancing in the darkness. In the center of the circle, a figure lay bound and gagged. It was Lena. Her eyes were wide with terror, her body convulsing slightly. She was surrounded by strange symbols, drawn on the floor in what appeared to be blood. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and decay. The old woman stood beside Lena, chanting in the guttural language of the ice. She held a knife in her hand, its blade gleaming in the candlelight. "No!" I screamed, my voice filled with rage. The old woman turned towards me, her blind eyes seeming to pierce my very soul. "You are too late, Aris Thorne," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "The ritual is about to begin, and you are next." She raised the knife, preparing to strike. I knew that I had to act fast or Lena would be lost forever. But what could I do? I was unarmed, outnumbered, and outmatched. Then I remembered something: the diary, the symbols I had copied, the language of the ice. It was my only hope. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the tattered diary. I flipped through the pages, searching for the symbols that could disrupt the ritual. The old woman saw what I was doing, her face contorting in anger. "You cannot stop me," she shrieked. "I am the vessel of the Ancient Ones. Their power flows through me." She lunged towards me, the knife raised high, but I was ready. I raised the diary and began to recite the symbols, my voice trembling but resolute. The old woman recoiled, her chanting faltering. The candles flickered, and the air crackled with energy. Then Maya appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. She tackled the old woman from behind, knocking her to the ground. The knife clattered across the floor. I rushed towards Lena, frantically trying to untie her bonds. The old woman struggled to get free, her strength surprising. Maya fought valiantly, but the old woman was too strong, too imbued with the power of the Ancient Ones. Then the cabin began to shake. The wind howled with renewed intensity, and the walls seemed to buckle inward. The storm outside had reached its peak, and the cabin was caught in the eye of the blizzard. The old woman saw her opportunity. She broke free from Maya's grasp and lunged towards me, her eyes burning with hatred. She was too close, too fast. I couldn't react in time. Then the roof of the cabin collapsed. A torrent of snow and ice poured down upon us, burying the old woman beneath its weight. The candles were extinguished, plunging the cabin into complete darkness. Silence descended, broken only by the howling wind and the groaning of the collapsing structure. I fumbled blindly through the darkness, searching for Lena and Maya. "Lena, Maya, are you all right?" I shouted, my voice filled with concern. "We're here, Aris." Lena's voice was weak but clear. "We're alive." "Let's get out of here." Maya's voice was urgent, "before this place collapses completely." Working together, we stumbled out of the ruined cabin into the heart of the blizzard. The wind tore at our clothes, the snow blinded our eyes, and the cold threatened to freeze us to death. But we were alive. We had survived the ritual. We had escaped the grasp of the Ancient Ones. And as we stood there, battered and bruised but still breathing, I knew that we could survive anything. The storm raged around us, a tempest of ice and snow, but we were not afraid. We were survivors. Chapter 18: The End of the Line. The blizzard was a maelstrom of white fury, a roaring beast intent on devouring us whole. Visibility was near zero, the wind tearing at our faces, the snow stinging our skin like 1,000 tiny needles. Every breath was a struggle, every step a monumental effort. "We can't stay out here," Lena screamed, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. "We'll freeze to death." "I know," I shouted back, my own voice strained. "But where can we go? There's nothing out here." Maya pointed towards the swirling snow, her face barely visible beneath her hood. "There, I think I see something, a dark shape in the distance." I squinted, trying to penetrate the swirling snow. At first I saw nothing. But then, as the wind momentarily subsided, I caught a glimpse of something dark and solid, looming in the distance. It was a structure of some kind, but unlike the cabin, this one was massive, imposing, and utterly alien. "What is it?" Lena asked, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "I don't know," I said, "but it's our only chance. Let's go." We stumbled towards the dark shape, our bodies driven forward by sheer desperation. The journey was grueling, the wind threatening to knock us off our feet, the snow burying us alive. But we pressed on, our eyes fixed on the promise of shelter, our hearts filled with a desperate hope. As we drew closer, the dark shape began to take form. It was a structure of immense size, constructed from some unknown material that seemed to absorb the light, rendering it almost invisible against the swirling snow. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, a monolith of impossible angles and unearthly geometry. "What is that thing?" Lena whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. "I don't know," I said, "but I have a bad feeling about it." We reached the structure and our apprehension deepened. It was a massive, seamless wall, its surface smooth and featureless, broken only by a single, narrow opening. The opening was dark and forbidding, like the entrance to a tomb. "This is it," Maya said, her voice barely a whisper. "The end of the line." I felt a shiver run down my spine. There was something profoundly unsettling about this place, a sense of wrongness that defied explanation. The air was heavy with a palpable sense of dread, as if we had stumbled into the domain of some ancient and malevolent power. "We can't go in there," Lena said, her voice trembling. "It's a trap. I can feel it." "I know," I said, "but we don't have a choice. We can't stay out here. We'll die." We looked at each other, our faces etched with fear and resignation. We knew that we were walking into the unknown, that we were risking our lives, but we had no other option. The blizzard was relentless, our bodies were failing, and this structure was our only chance of survival. With a deep breath, I stepped towards the opening and peered into the darkness. What I saw sent a wave of nausea washing over me. The interior of the structure was a vast, echoing chamber, filled with strange and unsettling shapes. The walls were lined with grotesque carvings, depicting scenes of unimaginable horror. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and decay. And in the center of the chamber, bathed in an ethereal glow, stood a figure. It was the old woman. Her blind eyes were open now, glowing with an unholy light. Her face was contorted in a chilling grin. Her voice was a guttural whisper, resonating through the chamber. "Welcome, children," she said. "I've been waiting for you." I recoiled in horror, my mind reeling with despair. It was a trap. All of it had been a trap, orchestrated by this ancient and malevolent being. We had been played like puppets, lured into this place for some unknown purpose. "We should have known," Lena whispered, her voice filled with regret. "We should have seen it coming." "It doesn't matter now," Maya said, her voice firm. "We're here, we have to fight." The old woman smiled, a chilling, predatory grin. "Fight," she said. "You cannot fight me. I am the vessel of the Ancient Ones. Their power is limitless." She raised her hands and the chamber began to transform. The walls shifted and distorted, the carvings came to life, and the air crackled with energy. The structure was no longer a building. It was a living entity, a manifestation of the ancient evil that had taken root in this place. We were trapped, surrounded by the darkness, facing an enemy that possessed unimaginable power. It was the end of the line. There was no hope of escape, no chance of survival. But even in the face of certain death, I refused to surrender. I would fight to the end to protect my friends, to defy the darkness, even if it meant sacrificing myself. I grabbed Lena and Maya by the hands, pulling them close. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice filled with regret. "I brought you here. I should have known better." "It's not your fault, Aris," Lena said, her voice choked with emotion. "We're in this together, we'll face it together." "We love you, Aris," Maya added, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for everything." Their words gave me strength, reminding me of the love and friendship that had sustained me through so many difficult times. I would not let their sacrifices be in vain. I would face the darkness with courage and determination, and I would do everything in my power to protect them. I turned towards the old woman, my eyes filled with defiance. "We're not afraid of you," I shouted, my voice ringing out through the chamber. "We will never surrender." The old woman laughed, a chilling, mocking sound. "Then you will die," she shrieked, "and your souls will become mine." She raised her hands, and the chamber began to tremble. The carvings on the walls pulsed with energy, and the air grew heavy with the stench of sulfur. The structure was about to unleash its full power, to destroy us all. But even as the darkness closed in, even as death loomed near, I saw a glimmer of hope. A faint light flickering in the distance like a dying ember. It was coming from the ice core sample. Chapter 19, The Core of Hope. The faint light emanating from the ice core sample was barely perceptible, a flickering ember against the encroaching darkness. Yet in that moment, it was a beacon of hope, a symbol of defiance, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The old woman saw it too, her face contorting in rage. "No," she shrieked. "It cannot be. The darkness is all-powerful. The light cannot penetrate its veil." She unleashed a torrent of energy, sending bolts of dark power hurtling towards the ice core sample. But the light held firm, its intensity growing stronger with each passing moment. It was as if the sample was drawing strength from the energy, transforming the darkness into its own source of power. Then I understood. The ice core sample wasn't just a relic of our past, a reminder of the horrors we had endured. It was a conduit, a vessel for the very essence of hope, resilience, and humanity. It was a physical manifestation of our will to survive, our refusal to surrender to the darkness. The symbols in the diary, the language of the ice, the whispers, the aurora, all of it was a reflection of the battle between light and darkness, a struggle for the soul of humanity. And the ice core sample was the key, the point of equilibrium, the weapon that could tip the balance in our favor. I reached out towards the sample, my hand trembling, my heart filled with a mixture of fear and determination. I knew that if I touched it, if I embraced its power, I would be forever changed. I would be opening myself to the full force of the Ancient Ones, risking my own sanity, my own soul. But I had no choice. If we were to survive, if we were to defeat the old woman and break free from this nightmare, I had to take the risk. I had to trust in the power of the light, the power of hope, the power of humanity. I closed my eyes, focusing all my energy on the memory of my mother's love, on the unwavering belief that Lena and Maya had placed in me, and I reached out to the ice core sample with all my being. As my fingers touched the ice, a surge of energy coursed through my body, stronger and more intense than anything I had ever experienced before. The chamber exploded with light, banishing the darkness, illuminating the grotesque carvings on the walls. I saw Lena and Maya, their faces etched with terror and awe. I saw the old woman, her eyes burning with hatred and fear. And I saw the truth, the ultimate truth that had been hidden from me for so long. The old woman wasn't a vessel of the Ancient Ones. She was one. The malevolent force that had taken root in Outpost 31, the entity that had twisted and corrupted the ice, the darkness that had been preying on our minds, it was all her. She was the embodiment of fear, despair, and self-loathing. She was the product of our own inner demons, magnified and amplified by the power of the ice. And she had been waiting, patiently, for the opportunity to consume us all. But now her power was waning. The light from the ice core sample was weakening her, disrupting her control over the chamber, breaking her hold on our minds. "No," she shrieked, her voice filled with fury. "I will not be denied. You are mine. You will all become one with me." She unleashed a final torrent of energy, attempting to crush us with her power. But it was too late. The light from the ice core sample had reached its peak, engulfing the old woman in a blinding radiance. She screamed, a sound of pure agony as the light consumed her, burning away her darkness, revealing the truth of her being. And as she burned, I saw what she truly was. A twisted, withered husk, devoid of all humanity. A hollow shell filled with nothing but fear and self-loathing. A pathetic creature, driven by a desperate desire to escape its own misery. Then she was gone. The chamber fell silent. The grotesque carvings on the walls faded, the air cleared, and the darkness receded, replaced by a soft, gentle light. The structure was no longer a living entity. It was a building again, a small wooden cabin, battered and worn, but still standing. We were free. I opened my eyes, my body trembling, my mind reeling from the experience. The ice core sample was still in my hand, its light dimming, its power spent. I looked at Lena and Maya, their faces filled with relief and wonder. "It's over," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "We did it, we're safe." We were safe, but we were also changed. We had faced the darkness, confronted our inner demons, and emerged victorious. We had survived the horrors of Outpost 31, and we had learned a valuable lesson, that even in the darkest of times there is always hope, and that the power to overcome any obstacle lies within ourselves. We walked out of the cabin, leaving behind the memory of the horrors we had endured. The blizzard had passed, and the sun was shining brightly in the sky. The landscape was still desolate and barren, but it was also filled with a quiet beauty. We stood there for a moment, taking in the fresh air, feeling the warmth of the sun on our faces. We were alive, we were free, and we were together. "What now?" Lena asked, her voice filled with hope. I looked towards the horizon, my eyes searching for some sign, some guidance. And then I saw it. A faint, shimmering line stretching across the sky. It was faint but unmistakable. The aurora. But it was different now. It was no longer a swirling mass of chaotic energy. It was a single, unified beam of light pointing towards a distant destination. I knew where we had to go. "That way," I said, pointing towards the horizon, towards the light. We turned and began to walk, our steps filled with purpose, our hearts filled with hope. Chapter 20: A New Horizon. The journey ahead was uncertain, the path fraught with challenges we couldn't yet imagine. But we were no longer driven by fear, no longer weighed down by despair. The darkness was behind us, and a new horizon beckoned. The aurora, now a guiding beacon, led us across the frozen plains, over icy hills, and through valleys blanketed in snow. The landscape remained desolate, a stark reminder of the world's harsh realities. Yet within ourselves, a transformation was taking place. The trauma we had endured, the horrors we had witnessed, had forged an unbreakable bond between us, a shared understanding that transcended words. We learned to rely on each other, to share our burdens, to draw strength from our collective resilience. Lena, her scientific curiosity reignited, studied the sky, deciphering the movements of the aurora, attempting to understand its nature and its purpose. Maya, her survival instincts honed by years of living in the Arctic, guided us through the treacherous terrain, finding food and shelter in the most unlikely of places. And I, still grappling with the demons of my past, discovered a newfound sense of purpose in protecting my friends, in ensuring that we would never again succumb to the darkness. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The aurora remained our constant companion, a shimmering thread guiding us through the vast emptiness. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the landscape began to change. The ice and snow gave way to patches of vegetation, then to forests of stunted trees, and finally to rolling hills covered in wildflowers. We had reached the edge of the frozen wasteland, the beginning of a new world, a world of life and hope. And then, one day, we saw it. In the distance, nestled in a valley bathed in sunlight, lay a village. It was a small, unassuming village, but it was a sign of civilization, a promise of human connection, a symbol of hope for the future. We approached the village with caution, our hearts pounding with anticipation. As we drew closer, we could see people moving about, tending to their homes, working in their fields, living their lives. They looked up as we approached, their faces etched with curiosity and surprise. We entered the village, and the villagers gathered around us, their eyes filled with wonder and welcome. They had heard stories of the horrors that had taken place at Outpost 31, stories of the darkness that had threatened to consume the world. They had feared that the darkness would spread, that it would engulf their village, their lives. But we were here. We had survived. We had conquered the darkness, and we were proof that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, hope could endure. The villagers welcomed us with open arms, offering us food, shelter, and companionship. They listened to our story, their faces filled with sorrow and understanding. They mourned the loss of our friends, the devastation of Outpost 31, the horrors we had endured. But they also celebrated our survival, our resilience, our unwavering determination to resist the darkness. They saw us as heroes, as symbols of hope, as a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. We stayed in the village for many months, helping the villagers to rebuild their lives, to heal their wounds, to prepare for the future. Lena used her scientific knowledge to improve their farming techniques, to develop new sources of energy, to protect them from the dangers of the environment. Maya used her survival skills to teach them how to hunt, how to build shelters, how to defend themselves against the elements. And I used my words to tell our story, to share our message of hope and resilience, to inspire others to fight against the darkness that lurked within us all. As time passed, we began to heal. The memories of Outpost 31 faded, replaced by new experiences, new relationships, new hopes for the future. We found peace in the simple rhythms of village life, in the warmth of human connection, in the beauty of the natural world. One day, as the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, I stood on a hill overlooking the village, gazing out at the vast expanse of the world. I thought of my mother, of my friends, of all those who had been lost in the darkness. I felt a pang of sadness, a lingering sense of grief. But I also felt a surge of hope, a profound sense of gratitude. We had survived, we had conquered the darkness, and we had found our way to a new beginning. The world was still filled with danger, with uncertainty, with the potential for darkness to return. But we were ready. We had learned from our past, we had grown stronger from our experiences, and we were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The aurora, now a distant memory, had served its purpose. It had guided us to this place, to this time, to this new beginning. And as I looked out at the horizon, I knew that the light would always be there, shining in the darkness, guiding us towards a brighter future. I smiled, a genuine smile, filled with hope and joy. The journey had been long and arduous, but we had finally reached the end of the line. And it was beautiful. The end.